The only thing that we're interested in is putting money in your wallet. If you want to bet the fights, if you want to have a little bit of action, you are in the right place. With my partner, Ian Parker, I am Brett Okamoto.
We're ready to rock between our parlays, our props, our straight picks. It's time to make money. Let's go.
That's right, it is your favorite time of the week. It is time for UFC Best Bets. And this week, the UFC is traveling to Nashville, Tennessee, Bridgestone Arena, where we will watch Cory Sandhagen in the main event take on Rob Font. Of course, Cory was supposed to fight Umar Nurmagomedov. Rob Font was supposed to fight Song Yadong. Cards are subject to change, and we have, nevertheless, a huge matchup at 135 pounds. So we are here to talk about it from a gambling perspective. As always, I am Brett Okamoto alongside our gambling expert, Ian Parker, who I'm excited to talk about this fight, man. I will be honest, I'm slightly less excited to talk about this fight than I was Cory Sandhagen, Umar Nurmagomedov, just because that was actually one of my favorite matchups of the entire schedule. I mean, at one point, I think we did something on ESPN.com and it said, which fight are you looking forward to the most? That one was like basically my number one. I really loved that fight. But hey, we have two very, very talented 135ers here, and we are going to be talking about that one. But before we do, let's take a look back at where were we in the world last weekend? We were in Salt Lake City. It was pay-per-view. Ian Parker, how did we do at UFC 291, Mr. Parker?
Well, in the spirit of transparency, not great with the best bets. We went 2-4. You know, a couple of close ones. The Blachowicz fight. I'm not going to get all crazy here. I thought he won that last round. But the optics of him being tired outweighed that he landed the more significant strikes. But it's up to the judges. Chiesa Holland. I really thought Michael Chiesa was going to be able to out-wrestle Holland for at least round one, get finished in round two. Once he didn't get those first two takedowns, it just seemed like he gave up. And that parlay at the end that I have there with DeLima and Selmasberger, shocked. Selmasberger dropped Uros Medic, then got finished in round three. And DeLima, by the time he said Derek Lewis, he was already out due to a flying knee. However, there was some positive with this. With our two best bets, we did win. We hit our four-leg parlay for the third week in a row. And we hit our prop of the night for the second week in a row, hitting Jake Matthews by sub at plus 180. So if you tailed the parlay, if you tailed the prop of the night, either you got out clear or minimal damage. On to this week we go.
Heck yeah, man. I mean, the parlays have been pretty hot, except for, of course, that one. It was the first time you had ever made a parlay as a best bet, and if you're going to lose a two-teamer, you might as well really, really lose it, which we did in that case. Derek Lewis taking care of business in Salt Lake City. Okay, moving forward, let's look at this UFC fight night. Again, it's coming to you from Nashville, Tennessee. Cory Sandhagen, one of the absolute elite bantamweights in the entire division. He was going to be taking on Umar Nurmagomedov. He takes out Rob Font, who was supposed to fight Song Yadong 2 weeks from now. So because of that, we got a catchweight bout, 140 pounds. We also have Jessica Andrade taking on Tatiana Suarez. Have not talked that much about Tatiana Suarez, but only because she has been inactive over the last several years, but a lot of hype around her. You can see that with a minus 400 line, and then 4 other fights rounding out this main card that you can find on 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific on big ESPN and ESPN+. So let's go ahead and start with this main event. 140 pounds. I don't know if that makes a huge difference either way. I've obviously let you discuss it. The change difference with Rob Font moving up 2 weeks. I also am not so sure that makes a big difference. I do think the difference then is just the stakes. It's the stylistic matchup. Obviously, with a guy like Umar Nurmagomedov, extremely dynamic, a lot of different skill sets going with him. Rob Font, very, very, very good, often underrated in his career. But he's got more of a forward kind of straight style, boxing style to go against Sandhagen. Is a little bit more dynamic. What do you think of this matchup with Sandhagen coming in at minus 330?
I'm laughing how you almost said he was overrated. I was like, man, Brett's really coming to the table honest today, even though I would disagree there. Now, you know what? Look, Cory Sandhagen is someone that he never says no to a challenge. He looked fantastic against Song Yadong. He looked phenomenal against Marlon Vera. I don't know who's that judge that scored that fight for Cheeto should be fired on the spot. He just keeps getting better and better. He's so well-rounded. His cardio's there. He's a very tough guy for anyone to fight. Now, to your point, the Umar fight would have been interesting to see if he could stop the takedowns and keep the fight standing and use that pace towards his advantage. But the other fight that got canceled that I was looking forward to was Rob Font versus Song Yadong, because that would have been a banger as well. For Font, he's a very technical striker, good boxer, good cardio, and we saw he does have that power as he knocked out Adrian Yanez in that last fight. Now for here, you see the odds are a little crazy, right? You got Sandhagen a little bit closer to almost a 4-1, minus 330 over Font, which makes a lot of sense. But for me, Brett, I'm going to go over 3.5 rounds here. Now, I will put Sandhagen in our parlay. I think this is his fight to win. I think the biggest change, though, is that if he does get this win, I don't think he necessarily gets a title shot the way he would have if he beat Umar Nurmagomedov. However, if Rob Font cuts the line after knocking out Yanez and gets an upset victory here, you never know. Maybe he's in line to get a big fight after this for a title shot. But for me, over 3.5 rounds, both guys very durable. They're smart fighters. I think if Sandhagen gets it done, it's in the later rounds, 4 or 5.
Okay, well, yeah, talk to me a little bit more about this pick, because I don't mind, of course, when you see the odds minus 330 for Sandhagen, you got to kind of try to find other ways to play it. You look at the method of victories here. You decided to go with the over 3.5. It is a little juiced, I got to say, at minus 160, which isn't surprising, though. These guys are 135ers. As you mentioned, they're both very durable. Stylistically, what do you see kind of coming out of Rob Font here? What do you see coming out of Cory Sandhagen? And how confident are you in taking this over, again, at the juice of minus 160?
You know, I'm pretty confident because Font showed us a lot of durability in that Cheeto fight. You know, we know he's a good boxer. He's got good defense, good head movement. The part where it makes me a little bit nervous is if Sandhagen takes the fight to the floor, because there, you know, granted, Font might have a little bit of underrated jiu-jitsu, meaning defensively he's there. He can throw up a triangle, he can throw up an armbar. But it's more about if Sandhagen takes his back with a lot of time on the clock. I think at some point he would get that choke, especially if they're not sweaty, the skin's dry. So for me, I like Sandhagen possibly to get this one by sub if we're going to go deep into the fight, you know. But for me, we've seen Font. If he comes out really aggressive the way he did against Yanez, that's where Sandhagen could hit his power double from there. So I think you're going to get a little bit of a more measured approach. I think Font's going to really want to keep this fight standing. I know Sandhagen has awkward foot movement, kind of a little bit like Dominic Cruz, how he bounces. But, you know, you got two smart guys. This win means a lot to Cory Sandhagen, maybe even more to Font here. I think both of them just getting the win is important. But listen, Sandhagen made a statement in his last couple fights. I think he's going to try and do it again.
Yeah, incredibly important fight for both guys. And I don't, if you were looking at that graphic, for what it's worth, Vegas has been wrong on Rob Font quite a bit over the course of his career. He just won as an underdog, as an underdog in Adrian Yanez with a fight that looked pretty easy, but then he ended up losing to Marlon Vera, losing to Jose Aldo as small favorites. So Vegas trying to figure out what they got in Rob Font, and that makes sense, man. I mean, the guy is right there. He just has these competitive fights, because I do think that he's very, very good, very, very well-rounded, but sometimes he doesn't have that lights out, puts you out type of thing to really kind of win some of these, to put a stamp on some of these fights, although he did in his last one against Adrian Yanez. All right, so that is the main event. Let's move to this co-main event. Very interesting main event. And I believe, Ian, it's one of those situations where the market is just doing such different things with these ladies. Jessica Andrade, market's pretty low on her, you know. I mean, she's been a staple of multiple divisions over the last several years. She comes in as a 3-1 underdog to Tatiana Suarez, who has not been super active, but everybody thinks the world of Tatiana Suarez. They have thought so since she debuted with the UFC years ago. But hey, man, she has not made strawweight in 4 years, and she's coming in 4-1 against a former champion. What do you think of these odds?
Well, look, I expect a lot of people to probably take a shot on Jessica Andrade based on her power, her experience, and because this number is a little crazy for someone in Tatiana Suarez, who is not active. You said it. You hit it on the head right there. However, you got someone, Tatiana Suarez, who is a special type of fighter, special product. You've not seen someone like her who could wrestle the way she is, how dominant she is on top. The question is, when will her striking kind of catch up? Her last fight, she looked a little rusty, but then she got the guillotine over Montana De La Rosa. However, then it comes into the matchup with Andrade. Now, what sticks in my memory with Andrade recently was her fight against Erin Blanchfield, where she came in on short notice, which it is what it is, but she just got mauled on the ground. And once you put Jessica on her back, granted, black belt in jiu-jitsu, she just gets a little bit lost. She hits the panic button way too quick. It almost seems if she's not in control of the fight, it's almost like she doesn't have a way to come back and get the win. Now, the other part about Jessica Andrade, which I find quite concerning as well, this will be her 4th fight in 8 months. And her last 2 fights, she was finished twice in the first round, one by sub, and she was knocked out back on May 6th against Yan Xinan. So for me, again, I understand why people may want to look at Andrade and listen, this is a former champ. She still carries a ton of power, but she hasn't finished someone since Amanda Lemos, where you see right there, which was the arm triangle standing one, which also doesn't happen very often. And I think this is a fight where she's running into another fighter where she is not going to have that physical advantage over. Tatiana Suarez is physically extremely strong, very bullish in the way she fights with her wrestling. And I expect Tatiana to throw an overhand right, come out, shoot a double, and go to work on the ground. For that reason, this is going to be my play, and it's going to be my prop of the night. I'm going to go Tatiana Suarez inside the distance to get it done against Jessica Andrade.
I don't blame it, man. I don't blame it. And hey, you know, as I say from time to time on this show, we are coming at it from a gambling perspective. This is not necessarily something that I would bake into like my analysis of just strict analysis of the fight. But when you're trying to find value, hey, Jessica Andrade, she got a new contract when she took that fight against Erin Blanchfield. And to your point, she's fighting frequently. Maybe she's just banking some money, man. She's banking some money. She's been there. She's been at the top. She's held a belt. She's taken fights, and she's making paychecks. And sometimes, you know, that doesn't work out so well against a very hungry woman who has not held a championship in Tatiana Suarez. So I don't mind the picks here, very heavily favoring Suarez, even at the odds. Let's move on to the rest of this main card. We start in the light heavyweight division. It is Dustin Jacoby taking on Kennedy Njoku. What do you think of this matchup between two guys who have shown some promise but have also had their share of downs? What is your thoughts on this 205 matchup?
Look, I think Dustin Jacoby at plus 140, there is some value there, although I also think there's value at Kennedy minus 165. Both guys very good strikers. You know, we've seen Kennedy be a zombie at some point. It's like he almost gets finished in round one, then he comes back, he wrestles, he's able to get it done. Jacoby is defensively very sound, but for me, I'm going over 2.5 here. I think we're going to look at a kickboxing fight, and we're going to look at Kennedy attempting a lot of takedowns. Jacoby's got good takedown defense. I think this fight's going to go bell to bell.
All right, bell to bell in that light heavyweight bout. How about Diego Lopez and Gavin Tucker? I think this fight has potential for some fireworks. What do we think about this fight?
I'm going to ride the Diego Lopez train here. In his last fight against Mosbar, he looked really good, almost submitting him on several different occasions, taking that fight on short notice against one of the better prospects in the division. Now, Gavin Tucker is also a guy who's good on the ground, but he hasn't fought since 2021 where he got knocked out by Dan Ige. I'm going with Lopez here. I think he gets it done. I like this fight. Like you said, potential fight of the night there.
All right, Diego Lopez in a potential fight of the night. Let's move on to Tanner Boser, who is maybe fighting for his job here. He has had a little bit of a rough stretch as of late, taking on Alexa Kamer, who looked good on Contender Series way back when, still trying to find his footing in the UFC. What do you think?
I think both guys, it's win or go home. Alexa Kamer, even though he's been out for 2 years, he had 2 losses in a row. If this isn't a Tanner Boser win, I don't know who else he beats in the UFC at this point. I think he's the better athlete. He fought someone in Ion Kutalaba who just has insane power for his first time at 205. This, for me, is a play on Boser. I'm going with him in this one. He's got to win this fight.
All right, and then rounding out the main event, we've got Ignacio Bahamondes taking on Ludovic Klein, a competitive fight here. What do you think with these odds? Bahamondes actually coming in at minus 220 here.
High number on Bahamondes. His last fight against Trey Ogden was very measured, very well-tempered, very patient, if you want to call it that. And then you saw Ludovic Klein, what he is capable of doing. That fight with Jai Herbert went to a draw. For me, I like over 2.5 rounds here. I know we're seeing a highlight of Bahamondes with that spin kick. We've seen him, I believe he got a Bravo or a Darce choke win also. However, if he's not able to really establish dominance, he fights from a distance where he'll have that advantage in the striking. I think this fight's going over 2.5 as well.
All right, that takes us through the 6-fight main card that you can find again on ESPN and ESPN Plus, but you can also find, of course, the prelims on ESPN Plus. Let's go through the prelims as we always do. Ian Parker giving us a pick on every single one. Go ahead.
Kyler Phillips coming back after a little bit of a layoff. Over 2.5 rounds against him and Hani Barcelos. I'm taking Jeremiah Wells here. Listen, Carlton Harris is a very good fighter, but Wells is just a different type of beast. I think he lands early, and if he gets on top, he can control. We saw him do it against Selmasberger. Give me Billy Q over Damon Jackson. I think this is going to be a battle of jiu-jitsu. I think this fight also goes deep into the 3rd round, so keep an eye there. Look, I love what Cody Durden's been doing. He's been able to establish the wrestling, but against someone like Jake Hadley, I think that's going to be a little bit tough. I think Hadley's the real deal. I'm going there. Now, Woodson and Dennis Bazooka, odds are not available. We just got this fight booked yesterday, but for me, that's going to be dog or pass. I don't even care what the line is. Woodson does not do well with pressure. Dennis will bring it. And last but not least, Asu Ode Osborne under 2.5 rounds. Either going to be a submission from Asu or a knockout from Osborne. Let's go.
Hey, I'll tell you what, some fun fights on those prelims, especially what you mentioned, Cody Durden and Jake Hadley. I think that could have been main event or main card material, but alas, it's on the prelims. Make sure you catch that one. I think it's a good fight. How about the main card parlay? We're doing something a little bit different. Only the main card. What do you got for the parlay this week?
Yeah, I'm shifting a little bit of gears with the parlay. We're going to go Cory Sandhagen. I still think he gets it done. Getting away to take all the props, just have him get a win. Same thing with Tatiana Suarez. And Ignacio Bahamondes, look, Ludwig Klein is a very solid fighter. I think that the reach advantage for Bahamondes and the striking gets it done here. So plus 138, we're only going a three-legger. I'm hoping that if we hit this, that'll be 4 in a row for the parlay. Now, for the next one, as you mentioned, the prelim parlay. I'm going to go Phillips and Barcelos over 2.5 rounds at minus 180. Barcelos is extremely durable. Phillips throws a lot of spinning stuff, but can also wrestle. I expect that one to be a barn burner. Jeremiah Wells and Jake Hadley round that up. That one's plus 311. So if we hit both of those, we'd hit 5 parlays in a row. And at those odds, I'm really liking these 2 parlays.
We have been on a little bit of a heater here on the parlays. Let's keep it going. And to the best bets, I think we got a little bit of bad luck on the best bets last week. So let's get some good luck and some good picks and do a clean sweep this week at UFC Fight Night. What do you got?
Would love it. You're right. We need to get the best bets to follow our parlays and prop of the nights because they've been really solid. Sandhagen fought over 3.5 rounds. I do think Sandhagen's going to turn this into a little bit of a grapple fest with control and secure those rounds early. Jacoby and Kennedy over 2.5 rounds. I think this is going to be a kickboxing match. I think there's going to be a lot of time spent against the cage. Kennedy's going to try and clinch and slow Jacoby down. That fight's going to be a lot of fun. Diego Lopez over Gavin Tucker. This is going to be a ground fight. I favor Lopez. Tucker coming off a 2-year layoff. Normally, I would not bet Tanner Boser at this point, but he's fighting someone who I think is just a power striker. 2 years off loss against 2 guys much lower than the competition Boser's fought. This has got to be his win or he goes home. Bahamondes Klein over 2.5. Now, Billy Q versus Damon Jackson. Brett, I'm going over 1.5 rounds. Currently on DraftKings, it's not there. I've seen it in the other markets. I'm expecting those odds to be anywhere from minus 165 to minus 180. That should be on DraftKings within the next 24 hours. That's going to be our final best bet with that play.
All right, so you got a little bit of everything from us. You got the prelim picks, main card picks. You got 2 parlays, main card parlay and prelim parlay. And then, of course, the best bets. So before we wrap up, let's talk about the other thing that's going on this weekend. Of course, it is Jake Paul taking on Nate Diaz in a boxing match, a 10-round boxing match in Dallas, Texas, where Jake Paul, if you could believe it or not, I don't know, if we would go back a couple years, tried to guess what the odds on this would have been, I think we would have been way off. Jake Paul is minus 390 against Nate Diaz, who is plus 280. Ian, what's your interest level in this? What do you make of the odds? And ultimately, are you betting this fight, or are you just sitting back and watching what unfolds?
Interest level, look, it's Nate Diaz. Anything Nate Diaz, I'm always interested in. He's a fun fighter. He's a legend. And you know what? Listen, even at a press conference when he's messing around, it's still Nate Diaz for you. And Jake Paul does a great job promoting fights. He's marketable. He knows how to push the buttons while being respectful. This is the first time where he's not making fun of his opponent, maybe because he's afraid of the Diaz army coming after him after the fight, before the fight, during the fight. But for me, look, with Jake Paul, if he's going to win this fight, it's got to be by knockout. We know Nate Diaz has cardio for days. He's got an unlimited gas tank. And for Nate Diaz, if he wants to win this fight, if he wants to pull off the upset, if that's what we even deem it these days when it comes to these type of boxing fights, he's got to do it the way he strikes in MMA. He's got to keep coming forward. He's got to use that jab, tons of volume, and let his cardio lead the way. So for me, dog or pass, I like Nate Diaz if he could do that. But, Brett, there's a fun bet to do. If you take Nate Diaz to win in round 9, plus 5,000. So if Jake Paul's gassing and Nate's throwing all these strikes, you never know. But too high of a thing at minus 390 for me to take Jake.
I mean, it's not that hard for me to close my eyes and envision, Jake Paul getting off to a little bit of a fast start, the bigger guy, the younger guy, but then Nate Diaz hangs on, has the cardio, has the durability to start wearing the guy down, then all of a sudden you're tired and stuck in a ring with Nate Diaz and you're going to lose in the second half of the fight. I can picture it at plus odds, Ian Parker, so I agree with your pick on that fight. And you can watch that on ESPN Plus. It starts at 8 Eastern, and of course the UFC Fight Night starts at 9 Eastern. So plenty of combat sports to take in this weekend. Thank you so much for tuning in to UFC Best Bets. Hopefully we gave you some good advice, and we will be back again as always next week to talk about how we did and to look forward at the next UFC Fight Night. Until then, take care, enjoy the fights, enjoy the weekend. Goodbye. We will see you next time.